Hello, ladies and gentlemen, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we're returning to the third and final part of our Succession live stream, which looks at our Succession series, XTRG, Tortuga Power, and myself, from Rule the Waves that we played all together, playing as France, and each one of us taking the reins of France for a 6-year stint before we passed it on to the other, and then we looped it around. It took place from 1900 until 1930-ish, and saw France rise to the preeminence of the world, becoming the unquestioned global superpower. Again, this is from the game Rule the Waves, which puts you in command of a European nation during the early 1900s, during the rapid naval race that occurred there, and allows you to play geopolitics as sort of the Grand Admiral, a Jackie Fisher or Admiral von Tirpitz type deal. You could play as a few other countries outside of Europe, but principally European. There is Japan, the US, hypothetical CSA, those kind of things. Anyway, guys, this is the third part in a live stream. In our first two parts, we looked at kind of our initial impressions of the series, what we were looking to get out of it, our ship design philosophies, and some desires for the new game. And with this third part, we'll go ahead and jump right back into the stream. Hope you guys enjoy. Catch you at the end. I also kind of wish that the game gave an auto-resolve feature for battles, because sometimes during wars it's just like, listen, I don't want to fight every single battle. You know, it'd be nice to have
completely agree. I even started coding my own auto-resolve thing, but it's a project that's collecting dust at this point.
That's why I got a few comments in the series like, whoa, why didn't you, you really blew through that battle? And it's like, yeah, I didn't want to fight 6 straight cruiser actions against Italy when they had no battleships left. I just wanted the war to end.
I couldn't agree with you more. I really couldn't agree with you more. I think the focus of this game is supposed to be, let's make Steam and Iron, which is just purely a tactical game, with a campaign element. But I think a lot of people enjoy the strategic elements of this more than they enjoy the tactical battles.
It's a more interesting, to me, it's a more interesting piece of being like, you're Tirpitz. You're not Jellicoe. You're not going to sail out with the fleet and fight it tactically. You can, that's fine. But to me, the whole concept behind the Rule of Waves is, it's a grand strategy Admiral sim where you get to design your fleet, you get to be Jackie Fisher, you get to be Tirpitz. And the tactical resolution is fine. I'm okay with it being included, but it's a separate game, to your point. It's Steam and Iron, and they kind of mash 2 game design ideas together. And it works overall pretty well. It's a really compelling and fun game, but there are definitely drawbacks, and I think that's one of them.
I think resources was something that the game seems to lack as well. Like, I mean, all these colonies that we took, it's good and all taking these colonies, but then there's no real sort of advantage to it. I mean, sure, you gain the naval base, and you gain a little bit of an increase in funds, but I think RTW, I think it really needs resources. Like, say, for example, I don't know, you control somewhere of the Congo. Say that you have a rubber resource there, and then, I don't know, somehow rubber is used in your ship construction, and then you could trade on the international market. I think it needs to go deeper. It needs to go, like, bloody Inception deeper into the strategic element and the design element. So you can imagine just how much that would affect your decisions with designs. Like, say, you're using a steel, and then you have to produce that steel, but say your industries don't produce enough, you have to secure that element, and say you don't like the British, but you have to buy your upper lip and then buy steel from them as France.
It does kind of simulate that somewhat. It simulates it abstractly, at least industrial limitations. If you're France and you go and you build like 20 battleships all at once before you go broke, you will see that there are steel shortages and other things like that you won't get if you don't build as much. So I think it does simulate local economy to some extent, but it is abstract. I think if they're going to do Rule the Waves 2, like they're talking about, and they're talking about bringing it into World War II, I have 2 big concerns. One, I don't think the current combat engine really will handle air combat at all effectively. My second concern is that you're going to have more control over where you fight and your overall fighting of the war, because World War I is fine to say like, oh, these random events, and there's not really much tactical direction that the Navy gives to where you're going to fight, because that's kind of how that war resulted. Or it was, focused around the colonies, like when Russia and Japan fought in the Russo-Japanese War. But if you're trying to play Rule the Waves into World War II, which is what they're talking about, you're going to have to your point, XTRG, you're going to have to be able to say, as Japan, I need you to go after the Dutch East Indies because we need oil to funnel, to fuel our economy. You're going to have to say, I need you to go after, different sections in the map. You're going to need more control. It can't just be random or scripted. Because if it's scripted, it'll just play out the exact same way every single time. And if it's random, it won't at all model the way that war was fought in World War II. Like, you've got to be able to give some tactical direction to where the war is going to be fought. Otherwise, it'll just be really bizarre, I think.
Yeah, I would say that resources might be a little bit outside the complexity for just one developer.
Maybe, I'm not saying you necessarily have to say, like, oh, you produce this much tonnage and you have to sign this trade deal. Because, like, even that, like, if you're saying limitation of scope, you're right. It's probably beyond the game's capabilities. But at the very least, this area produces oil, which the game does. And you need to be able to say, I need to go get that. Or I need to go, do this or do that. It needs more than it has now. Maybe not quite all the way to the level of tonnage being produced and signing specific trade deals, but it needs to at least account for resources and scarcity based on your empire and where you're located.
Yeah, definitely. I think this kind of brings us into the second question we've had asked, which is just what are we looking forward to about Rule of Waves 2? And we've already said the things I'm interested in. I want automation of some fights so that we can play more strategically. And there was another one. Somebody else go, and I'll come back.
I'm not looking forward to World War II. Is it bad if I say I'm not looking forward to that? I would actually much rather the game start in like 1880 or 1870.
Yeah,
I think this engine would handle an early start. So actually what I will say is if the game goes to 1945, fine. I mean, I'm sure the developer will figure out a way to make it work. I think what would be more exciting to me is if it starts a little bit earlier too, because it's really interesting. If you look at the ship designs I think this game shines at a surface level engagement simulator, which is what I worry about. I mean, I suppose, air combat, if you're smarter than me, which the developer obviously is, he can figure out how to make it work. But, submarine combat doesn't work as well in this game because it's really a surface combat game, right? To your point, I think it was Tortuga, you said you've only seen a submarine fire at a ship once with torpedoes. Well, if it's World War II, that's going to have to change to some extent. So you're going to have to make submarines a bigger part. You're going to have to make air a bigger part. But if you start in like 1880, there is this whole sort of ironclad ram surface ship design element. And then you've got the Royal Sovereign, which is the first of the pre-dreadnought ships, which is almost like a dreadnought in of itself in that it revolutionizes the way that ships are designed. They go from these, completely bizarre designs in this sort of ram mentality or almost like a old ship of the line mentality to a modern battleship design, but with limited main guns. And then in 1905 with the Dreadnought, you have another revolution. I think what gets missed often enough is that early, 1890s design revolution that happened was just, in my opinion, if you look back at those designs, was just as influential to ship design as the Dreadnought was. So I think if you could capture an earlier turning point, you could have a like 1880 to 1940, and you get that rapid, development change in 1890. You get that rapid development change in 1905, and then you kind of get that rapid development change in the interwar period where aircraft start to become, really powerful in the whole naval combat realm. So I think what's exciting to me is capturing more change, because I think that's what this game does a really good job about, is it captures the rapid technological development change and the influence that has on surface combat or, naval combat in general. And being able to do that more than just once, where you're starting and you're going to be obsolete in 5 years, being able to have multiple turning points in that, I think is the most interesting piece to me. And wow, that was a long-winded way of saying it.
I like the point that you made about the earlier technological revolutions. I mean, when you do have the rise, the appearance of the ironclads, I can't remember the quote now, I can't remember who said it, but it was a quote of something like, once the ironclad emerged, Britain went from having over 100 first-rate ships to only having 2, and they were the ships that were clad in iron.
Yeah.
So you see this gigantic shift in just geopolitics. I mean, the American Civil War, the ironclads, that really did send out seismic shockwaves when it came to naval affairs.
Yeah, but to our friends across the channel, they were already building. The French and the British were building ironclad ships first. To be fair, if we're being honest, they were better too. They were actually ocean-going ships. Ours had a tendency to sink.
They did okay. I like the rams, the Confederate rams. I just love the fact that it's like it's interesting. You have that ironclad ship used in like antiquity tactics. Basically triremes ramming into other ships and quinqueremes. It's something. It's like full circle. So interesting.
Well, you know what they say: if at first you don't succeed, ramming speed.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I would say one other thing. I remembered it: nations fighting other nations. That's something that's kind of missing on in the original, in this Rule of Waves. You go to war with other people, but there's no simulation of other nations fighting other nations. There's not really a good like world war feel to it, because the most you can get is if you're allied with somebody, you can go to war with one other person, and then if you get lucky, tensions will mount enough with another, and they'll join, but that resets the victory point count. So the multi-nation wars are not handled very well right now, and that's something I would be looking forward to.
I think you have to do that if you're doing World War II, right? I mean, like,
yeah,
I would say that for World War
I
also, but World War I, at the very least, from a naval combat perspective, was mostly Britain versus Germany, right? Like, if we're being honest about World War I's naval, outside of the first couple months, and yeah, there was some stuff that went on in the Mediterranean, but really, it was like Austria versus France in the Mediterranean with some British assistance, and it was, and then later Italy, and it was really Britain versus Germany in the North Atlantic, and you could get away with a one-on-one approach when it was the naval combat wasn't as dynamic in terms of the powers involved. Whereas, and I know I'm giving short shrift to the Russians and the Germans in the Baltic, but still, in most scenarios, it was 1v1. Whereas in World War II, like, you've got a lot more contestants with a lot more even naval power. You've got Britain versus Germany. You've got the U.S. versus Japan and Germany. You've got the Dutch in there. You've got the French in there for a while. I think it's a more dynamic war, and if you're going to really cover it and cover it well, you're going to have multi-nation wars, to your point.
It's going to be interesting to see the aspects of carriers, like how are carriers going to be playing a role here. I mean, like, you obviously have the seaplane carriers, and then you have like these sort of true carriers. Like, at the start of the war, the British did have aircraft carriers, and they were used in an anti-submarine warfare role, which turns out didn't really work too well, did it? No. So yeah, it's going to be a really interesting aspect. I do think with Rule the Waves 2, I don't know about World War II, I kind of feel like a Cold War setting might have worked out well, where you had the anti-ship missiles. I feel like that would have been something a little bit easier to model. So you could obviously have your ship missiles or your guns or something. So you'd still have the revolution in terms of ship design. So you could start, let's say, in 1945 or 1946, and then as you go through another technological revolution, the electronic revolution, so to say.
So what you want is like Command Modern Air Naval Operations to create like a diplomatic ship design phase. Because Command, I don't know if either of you played that game, but it's basically it's like the successor to Harpoon, and it covers from 1946, I believe, to present day. But it's just a battle engine. It's almost like Steam and Iron was for this, except for modern ship combat.
Pretty much.
I'm in the process of learning it, so I don't know much about it yet.
It can take a little bit of time. It's certainly, it's a very big game. But yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I keep doing that.
No, it's fine. I'm trying to learn that game, CMN-AO. It's just, I load it up and then I end up doing something and then I forget. But have you tried War in the Pacific by Gary Grisby?
Yes. I've been in a PBM with I don't know if either of you go to Belugan Campaign's site at all, but I've been doing a PBEM with him. I'm into like August of 1942 as Japan, and my merchant convoys are feeling the wrath of his cruiser rating, which is not very historical, but certainly destroying my ability to support my forward forces.
The Wrath of Khan.
Basically.
We have a question here. How would you keep the Cold War from going nuclear? Well, it's one of those things. Would you really use I suppose there was a lot of ideas floating around of using nuclear weapons against fleets, but it'd be really, really bloody difficult. I mean...
Yeah, I think the question is, how do you limit it to tactical, right? Because like once you go strategic, game over. It's all over. But If you
Pretty
keep it
much.
with tactical weapons like nuclear torpedoes or nuclear depth charges, you could still keep the game interesting. I don't know how feasible it is from a strategic level, but
it's something that's hard to say because it's like, was it ever tried? It's never happened, has it? You've never seen nuclear weapons deployed in a anti-ship role.
Well, they tested them, right? I think they tested.
Oh, the American
drops.
tests.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, and I mean they were on ships. The Russian submarines that were trying to get into Cuba during the Cuban Missile Crisis had nuclear torpedoes on them as well, but they were never used, obviously.
So
Thank
we
God.
know.
Well, we wouldn't be here if they were, so in all likelihood, anyway.
Yeah, I think what you'd have to do though with a Cold War sort of game is basically have it. Is it DEFCON 3 where conventional arms is basically allowed? Is it DEFCON 3?
The DEFCON whole that yes, I think you're right, but the DEFCON structure just doesn't make any sense to me because the U.S. is bombing people at DEFCON 4. Like I think we're at DEFCON 4 or whatever during the Iraq War, and that I don't
bombing. You mean liberating?
I mean we were attacking other enemy forces, regardless of whether your political views say we should do it or not. I'm just saying that we were weapons free at a DEFCON 4 status.
Definitely.
That's a little bit. Oh, we kind of drifted a little bit off the rule waves topic.
Wait, what?
Didn't we? I don't know if there's any other questions actually, but I might have to get going pretty soon here.
Okay. Well, I appreciate everybody coming out. I definitely enjoyed the chat. I know one question someone asked in the pre period was that are there any other games that we would consider doing a Succession series for? I mean, I'm open to it. I think we've talked about maybe Crusader Kings or EU or something like that. I'm not an expert at either of those games, though I have them. It depends on. I don't want to put anyone on the spot being like, will you play a game with me? But I think I would be interested in another series, even if it's Rule the Waves.
I think the Crusader Kings lends itself extremely well to a Succession series because it itself is a Succession game. It's like the most appropriate for a Succession series. And I don't think it's as hardcore as Europa Universalis, so there can be a little bit of humor involved, which means that we can allow XTRG to play, and we don't have to worry about things falling apart under his reign.
Wow. Apply cold water to the burn there.
What's the equivalent in Crusader Kings of a ship that only has guns firing forward?
I don't know. Maybe
the best ship.
I don't know. But we should also talk about any future plans we have coming up. You can probably pitch something on like Historical Gamer. Right now you're doing the Civil War stuff.
I kind of feel like my channel's become the Ultimate General channel series lately because Ultimate General Civil War is in early access and I've been playing the hell out of that game. I enjoy it a lot.
It's so good.
It is. It's really good. My main gripe with it is I always see like when you're on the Confederate side and you're fighting the Union, they're just like charging you like zombie hordes, and that's not at all how the war was fought. There was very little melee, so that's a slight, I see it and I just twitch a bit. But outside of that, it is a brilliant game, and I've been playing a lot of that. Chancellorsville and Stones River just came out, so I was actually streaming that last night at like 5 in the morning because I went to bed at 7 and woke up at 2. But a lot of Civil War 2, and I'm not quite
sure. Do you have anything like naval oriented? Do you think you'll be on your channel in the upcoming?
Naval oriented?
We can always do another Succession series.
We could. What I would like to do is I just picked up a book on the U-boat. There's a book I got at Half Price Books that's called U-Boat Diaries or something like that, and it's just like 500 pages of the captain's like log in the ships from all the different U-boats, a lot of different U-boats in World War II. So not even like sailor diaries, but just contact report, that kind of thing, what their actual logs were. And it's
what kind of logs are we talking? Oak or birch?
So like the captain says like 900 hours, enemy freighter sighted, whatever, and then like 1915, basically just the play-by-play of the ship's actions throughout the day. So to me that's interesting, and what I would think would be really cool is, and I don't know if there's I haven't really looked too in depth with it yet, but what I think would be neat would be doing like a Silent Hunter or series where you kind of incorporate like realistic U-boat life and build your own like captain's diary type deal, and maybe a little bit more edited function where you show the gameplay, but you also talk about some history, build in some like fake sort of crew interaction, those kind of things, and you talk about it almost like an actual diary for a captain. I think that would be really interesting. I think that would require a lot more time than I have right now, but it is something that's on my wish list to do.
Have either of you actually played Aurora 4X?
I have not. I've heard about it.
Yes. This is not really naval, though, right?
Oh, it's
Space navies.
Space navies, yes.
I mean, it does the design just brilliantly. It's definitely something that does play in for like something like Succession series. There's just so many ways to tailor it, but the level of design is absolutely incredible. So I think it would make for something quite good for a Succession series. I'm trying to think now how to.
Actually, one of my viewers recommended Aurora as well, saying that the ship design, even though it's space, his opinion was it was much better than Rule the Waves as a game.
Oh my god, yes.
It's one of the best. I mean, Aurora 4X is an incredible game. The only problem is the appeal is limited, since it's not just... It's basically Rule the Waves, except for there's no steam and iron portion. You just look at spreadsheets.
But it's tactical battles. I mean, you do fight your battles. And they can...
There's no visuals, right?
Yeah, there is. There's visuals of seeing your enemies literally.
I mean, I played Out of the Park Baseball on my channel, and that's just like a text sim basically as well. And a lot of people enjoy it.
Yeah. It's a really good game. I would love a Succession series on that too.
I would need to. Is it freeware, or how much does it cost?
Yeah, it's actually free.
Right.
Yeah, it's free. It's being worked on at the moment. He's the designer is only a single designer, so when you say one designer can't do it all, well, this man can. Anyway, I believe he's working on a version of it where it's going to run on C++ or C++ or something like that. The issue with Aurora 4X at the moment is like over time, there's so much going on that it will run to a crawl, but with the new version it should be a lot more efficient. But yeah, it's design is incredible in there, especially with how weapons work. For example, you have your laser weapons, and they have like a sort of cone of fire. So like with a laser, it's a single fire, so you can see the armor profiles of your ships, and like the thicker the armor, the more armor cubes you have, basically. Like, you imagine a spreadsheet of cubes. Like, each layer that you add increases the amount of layers. So a laser would drill through the armor, which is interesting. And then you have something like plasma bombards, where they have incredibly short range, where they're like hugely explosive firepower.
I mean, I know what you're talking about, XTRG, but I think it's going to be incredibly difficult to explain. It's a difficult game to learn.
I'll dive into it. It's interesting. I like the idea of Crusader Kings personally. Maybe you're not interested in XTRG, but at the very least, I think that would be a fun series, and I don't know if either of you are really into that, but I think we could do that. We could do an Aurora series as well. I just need to learn the game a bit before I just stumble around. We're like, what's going on?
And XTRG, what do you have going on in your channel in the upcoming month or so?
Bloody hell, what do I know?
And maybe in particular with anything with naval combat or...
War in the Pacific.
Yeah, you're doing War in the Pacific. Great. That's it's really in-depth game.
What else am
I actually want to do War in the Pacific as well, as far as like a somewhat edited, as we go through the 75th anniversary for a lot of these events. I want to do something for Midway. I want to do a few videos there, and I think War in the Pacific is the natural game to do that. Also, maybe some naval action, but it's hard to jump into necessarily. I used to play a lot of Age of Sail, so.
Atlantic Fleet, it's a nice game. I just wish it was a little bit quicker. It's like when you're playing the game and then you're doing the turns, it's really annoying, Did you find that, like, just having to end the turn, end the turn, end the turn, end the turn, just to get a little bit closer?
Yeah, I played that a lot. It was on one of my top 5 most played list for 2016. I played it a lot at the start of the year. My main issue with that is I don't think it handles subs all that well. And
no. Oh my God,
how do you fight the Battle of the Atlantic with a poor sub engine? Like, it's really interesting for the early warriors where the German fleet gets out, and I guess I've got quibbles with it. Like, surface combat doesn't make sense to be turn-based because you've got 5-inch guns on destroyers firing at the same rate of fire as 15-inch guns on battleships, which doesn't make sense. But you also, it just kind of gets really repetitive and just kind of really a bit of a slog in some of those battles.
I think it's fun to pick up for like a moment if you want to simulate the Battle of the Bismarck. You're like, I want to dive into this. I want to, live that moment in history for a moment. I think it does this well, but the campaign, an extended play of Atlantic Fleet gets very repetitive.
The idea of the campaign is superior to me, though. Like, there's so few games out there that let you simulate the Battle of the Atlantic, and I want there to be more games. I just wish this did a better job of it.
True. Well, I'll just say on mine, I'm about to do another Rule the Waves series as well. I'll be playing as Japan this time. And then actually XTRG and I are thinking about doing War in the East if I ever find the time to play it. But these Gary Grigsby's games are just, they're not trivial.
Which one of you is going to play as Germany?
Oh, we haven't decided that yet.
Okay. Well, then if XTRG is Germany, then you can start a War in the West game with me, and I'll be the Western allies all at the same time.
That'd be hilarious.
They're actually, apparently Gary Grigsby's trying, like, that's their long-term vision. Who knows if they'll ever get there, but they're going to release a new War in the East, and either maybe not this year, but next year, I think. And then they want to take that engine, incorporate it into the most recent War in the West, and create like a gigantic War in Europe game.
Yeah, I've seen talk of War in Europe, but that's like, as far as I can tell, I don't know much. I just read like a couple posts about it. It's years off, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, the new War in the East won't be till 2018, I think. And
it usually take about 4 years.
They won't officially comment, but maybe 2018. I hope.
Yeah, right.
I mean, well, I do have a line with the developers. I have spoken to them. I'm going to try and get access to the beta when it is available, but it's going to use the logistics system from War in the West. There's actually some screenshots online where you see the air system. Let me see if I can find those right now. It's definitely looking really good.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, but I just need to learn more in the East first so that I'm comfortable with any of these Gary Grigsby games.
You'll be fine.
They're not that. I mean, I'll be honest, War in the Pacific was easier for me to pick up than the most recent War in the East. I felt like it communicated things a little bit better, even though the UI is much better in the War in the East. It was just, I feel like I didn't know what was going on.
The scope is larger in Pacific, but there's less units. I mean, it's like you had a hell of a lot less men in the Pacific theater than you did in the Eastern theater.
If you exclude China.
True.
But anyway. Yeah, XTRG, anything else other than War in the East or Tortuga? Anything else you guys are working on?
I was looking to play some Mech Warrior. I don't know, I've recently got back into Mech Warrior. It's not really naval, is it? Unless you're going to watch.
No, that's okay. It's something you're going to do, and that's fine.
Did we, when we ended the game, did it give us like you get this ship class named after you based on your
that'd be a great way to conclude is to resign. Let's resign right now.
Okay. I should probably change the input from this static image to the game. Do you really want to resign? Yes. Yes.
Do you really want to?
Wow, look at all this. Look at all these battles in here, too. Nice. I didn't realize it did that.
Pretty cool.
That's awesome.
How long has this been a thing? I've not seen this.
This has always been a thing, but the problem is this is only the battles that are as long as I've ever played, I remember seeing this. So
I didn't know that. Does it give you any input if you click on them? Yeah, apparently. Or when you hit the max end date and you decide to end the game.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it only goes up to 1938, but
fleet tonnage.
Oh, look at the blue.
Look at the British. Oh my god. Oh wow.
Well, that means the Italians must suffer something similar.
Yeah, probably much less though. Yeah, because they're always smaller. They don't even have a navy yet anymore.
Well, they were destroyed twice, right? It wasn't really fair.
See, the problem with the economy chart is that doesn't make sense because you can't really take over main provinces, so you're never going to see much of a drop in economy.
I agree. That one's not significant.
Summary of ships lost. Oh, it doesn't let you sort. Great Britain, 16 battleships, 16 battle cruisers. Good lord. Italy, 4 and 7. What did we lose? 3 battleships, 3 battle cruisers, 2 battleships, pre-dreadnought. Wow.
Now, I was the lion's share of those losses as well.
We lost a lot of auxiliaries, though. All your little minesweepers. All right. Well, I thought there was a spot where it tells you like what gets named.
Got to close one more time or something.
There historical Tortuga gamer, Prestige 87. In recognition of our service, the Navy will name a new aircraft carrier after us. Okay.
Well, it's very fitting for Rule the Waves 2 coming up.
Yeah. Can we carry our save into Rule the Waves 2?
I doubt it.
All right.
Litoville will live again.
Well, I guess that's a fitting end point, unless either of you have any final parting words, something you want to plug.
The Dunkirk was the best ship ever designed. She did no wrong.
Well, I have a question for you, Historical Gamer. Are you going to be streaming after this? Because there's several people who might stick around if you
No, I've got to run. This is my last Saturday off before my classes start back up. So I will probably be on maybe really late, maybe like 1 in the morning. But outside of that, I'm probably done for a while.
Okay, very good.
But I will stream probably Ultimate General, the last part of my Chancellorsville battle, some point, either late tonight or sometime tomorrow. Assuming the Packers win. If they lose tomorrow, then I might be, crying.
Yeah, depressed. I understand.
But anyway. Any final words from either of you?
No, I think that's it.
Okay. Well, thanks again to everybody who. Oh, sorry.
Live long and prosper.
Indeed. Well, thanks to everybody who showed up. I appreciate all the comments in the chat. I'm going to share the stream file with both XTRG and Tortuga. So if you guys want to post it on your channel as well, feel free. Otherwise, this is the Historical Gamer with XTRG and Tortuga Power saying thanks for coming out. And until next time, bye-bye.
Take care.
Yup.